A contractor in Phoenix pulled the first piece of siding off a 10-year-old stucco home and said he almost stepped back. Behind a wall that looked completely fine from the street, the framing lumber was black. Not dirty. It was black. The sheathing underneath had been holding moisture for years, silently, invisibly, while the homeowner paid her mortgage every month and assumed her house was a house. The repair estimate was $64,000. The home had passed every inspection. The builder had been out of warranty for 3 years by the time the ROT was discovered. That contractor told me he sees this every week. Different addresses, same story. And then he said the sentence that started this investigation. The people who built these homes knew this would happen. They knew it would happen after the warranty expired. That is not a construction problem. That is a business model. Because stucco is not a new material. It has been applied to walls for centuries in hot and dry climates and performed exactly as intended. The stucco that is failing on American homes right now is not failing because stucco is bad. It is failing because the system around it, the installation methods, the underlying materials, the code minimums, and the inspection process were redesigned over the past 25 years in ways that made failure not a possibility, but a schedule. Start with what stucco actually is, because the industry has spent significant money making sure most homeowners never understand the difference between what stucco used to be and what it is now. Traditional 3-coat stucco, the kind applied to homes built before the 1980s, was a system. A scratch coat was applied directly over metal lath, a brown coat was built on top of it, and a finish coat over that. The total thickness was roughly 7/8 of an inch. It was labor-intensive, time-consuming, and heavy. And it was extraordinarily durable, because the thickness itself was the water management strategy. Moisture that penetrated the finish coat had to travel through nearly an inch of dense, cementitious material before reaching anything that could be damaged. That system is not what is in most American homes built after 2000. What replaced it is called 1-coat stucco, sometimes synthetic stucco, sometimes EIFS. The names vary. The problem does not. 1-coat systems were adopted by production home builders because they are faster to apply, lighter in weight, and significantly cheaper per square foot than traditional installation. A skilled crew can coat an entire tract home in a fraction of the time. And in a production environment where subcontractors are paid per unit, and builders are moving dozens of homes through framing and closing simultaneously, speed is the only metric that survives contact with the budget. But here's the trap the real estate brochure will never explain. 1-coat stucco systems are not monolithic. They are barrier systems, meaning they are designed to keep water out at the surface rather than to manage water that penetrates through. Barrier systems have a single catastrophic vulnerability. The moment water finds a path past the outer surface, which on any real house happens at every window, every door, every penetration, every caulk joint that shrinks over 4 seasons of thermal expansion and contraction. The water is now inside the wall, with no designed path to escape. Traditional stucco, with proper weep screed, detailing and building paper underneath, was designed to manage water entry as an expected condition. 1-coat systems applied over oriented strand board sheathing with a single layer of house wrap treat water entry as an error the system does not need to accommodate. The error happens in every single house, without exception. And that is not the real problem. The real problem is that the failure is completely invisible until it is catastrophic. Stucco does not show moisture damage on its exterior surface until the underlying structure is already compromised. By the time you see a crack, a stain, paint bubbling near a window, or soft spots when you press against a wall, the framing and sheathing behind that wall have typically been saturated for years. The exterior of the home looks fine because stucco holds its shape, even as everything behind it disintegrates. You are looking at a facade held up by ROT. Moisture intrusion inspections, using thermal imaging and resistance meters on 10 to 15-year-old stucco homes in the Sunbelt, consistently show elevated moisture readings in 70 to 80% of tested structures. Not all of those represent active rot, but a significant portion are homes where the biological process of wood decay is already underway inside finished walls, invisible to the owner, invisible to any buyer's standard visual inspection, and outside the builder's warranty window. Now, here's the connection that turns this from a building science problem into something with specific authors. The builders who adopted one-coat stucco as the production standard in the late 1990s were not unaware of its water management limitations. Trade publications from that era, contractor training materials, and building science literature all documented the moisture risks of barrier-dependent exterior cladding systems. Industry conferences discussed it. Researchers published on it. The information was available to every production builder operating at scale. The system was adopted anyway, because the warranty math worked. A 10-year structural warranty on a one-coat stucco home with builder legal language that defines structural defect narrowly enough to exclude most moisture damage scenarios means that by the time the wall is visibly failing, the builder's liability has expired. The homeowner owns the rot. The builder is already permitted and selling in the next subdivision 2 counties over. Here's what that transaction looks like when you put both sides on the same page. The builder saves $4 to $6 per square foot by specifying one coat over 3-coat installation across an entire subdivision. Multiplied across hundreds of homes, that is millions of dollars in captured margin before the first family moves in. The homeowner absorbs $60,000 to $100,000 in remediation costs a decade later, after every warranty window has closed, after every legal recourse has expired, and after the sales agent who walked them through the model home has moved on to a different company in a different market. The inspection system that should catch this does not and cannot, because municipal inspections verify installation against code minimums at the time of construction. The moisture intrusion that will eventually destroy the wall does not appear at inspection. It appears 7 years later on a contractor's moisture meter that nobody required, and the seller was not legally obligated to commission. The code minimum was written for the moment of installation. The failure arrives on a different schedule entirely, and that schedule was not a surprise to anyone who designed the product, wrote the warranty, or lobbied to keep the inspection requirements where they were. What happened next in the production home building industry accelerated every part of this problem. As national builders scaled through the 2000s and the private equity model took hold across the industry, the per-unit cost pressure on every subcontractor in the chain increased. The stucco crew, who were paid per house, had less time on each job. The window flashing detail that requires an additional 20 minutes per opening got skipped more frequently. The drainage mat between sheathing and stucco, which costs additional material and labor, was value engineered out of the specification before the bid was ever submitted. Pan flashing at windowsills, a detail documented in moisture intrusion litigation as the single most common point of failure in stucco systems, is a $10 material decision. Without it, water entering behind the window frame goes directly into the rough opening framing. It becomes a $20,000 repair decision a decade later. In production construction, it is frequently absent, not because the installer forgot, but because the schedule and the per-unit rate made it economically irrational to include. The person who made it economically irrational will never open that wall. Moisture intrusion inspections are not part of a standard real estate transaction. A standard visual inspection tells you whether the surface looks damaged. A stucco-specific moisture assessment, using thermal imaging and invasive probe testing at every window flashing, door surround, roof-to-wall, junction, and exterior penetration, tells you what is actually happening inside the wall. Those are two different assessments. They produce two different results. Only one of them is typically required before a family commits to the largest purchase of their financial lives. The one that is required is the one that cannot see the ROT. There are now entire neighborhoods across the Sun Belt, built between 1995 and 2015, moving through the age range where the moisture timeline the builders understood and the homeowners did not is beginning to resolve. The walls are arriving at the point the warranty math was designed to outlast. In Phoenix, in Las Vegas, in Dallas, in Charlotte. In every market where production builders ran one coat stucco over oriented strandboard sheathing with minimum code house wrap and called it a finished product, the inspection clock that started at closing is running out. The contractor in Phoenix sealed that wall back up, billed $64,000, and left a moisture meter reading report with the homeowner. At the bottom of the report, he wrote one note. The wall looked fine last year. It always does. Until the day someone pulls the first piece of siding and the math the builder ran 15 years ago finally shows up in the framing. The builder collected that margin at closing. The homeowner is collecting the bill right now.